trapped there?
Trick-or-treaters.
Happy Halloween.
Hi and welcome to the Geek Legion of Doom. This is going to be a review for a new horror anthology movie being released in February of 2018 by Highfliers called Charlotte. Not really sure why it's called Charlotte, if I'm honest. I don't see the relevance in the actual story there, but we'll skip over that. Now, this anthology is somewhat interesting because this anthology is simply a collection of short films that have been released within the last kind of 7 or 8 years and have been basically put together as an anthology. So they weren't made for this particular anthology. They are simply a variety of sort of stories. They have a loose thread in regards to, well, about half of them are to do with killer dolls, and I'm guessing that's because the success of kind of Annabelle and Chucky, etc. But not all of them, so there's not even a running thread. Basically, there's a bunch of kind of short films. A lot of them by one guy called Patrick Rea, but not all of them. Anyway, and yeah, so they kind of put together with this kind of like a loose kind of wraparound story. This kind of babysitter sitting at home being abused by a killer doll herself, made to watch all these kind of horror films. But as far as I know, they were never meant to be together. They've been kind of added retrospectively and made into this kind of one anthology. One of the films has even been in another anthology that I've seen called Monster X, and sadly it's probably the worst one, but there you go. So it's a bizarre anthology, low budget anthology horror movie with a loose thread of kind of killer dolls. And there are some kind of films here that do kind of go into the kind of the killer doll, kind of haunted doll kind of territory. Ones that have a kind of a symbolic meaning to dolls. And I've got to say, as with most anthology movies, it's a kind of a fair mix, and some are good, some aren't. But I've got to say, these are low budget ones, and I was relatively impressed with this lot, I've got to say. My favourite is a Girl Scout cookie one, which is kind of a horror comedy. And it's basically this guy keeps getting knocks on the door from these girls selling cookies and stuff. And we don't really get that in the UK, but I understand it's a thing in America. And they seem to have, he's not interested, but they seem to have some kind of like weird properties, and they simply won't leave him alone. I kind of quite liked it. I thought it was quite a fun concept, and it was actually quite a well-made one. The weird thing about some of these stories, and the fact that they're kind of really unrelated shorts as well, is that a lot of them finish in a very particular way. They almost finish like the story isn't completely told yet. So we get to a point and a kind of reveal happens, and then that's the end of the story. It's both a good and a bad thing. It's good in the fact that you're invested in this film, and you kind of are, you wanting to see more of it, which is a good thing. But the frustrating thing is you sometimes feel like you only got half the story. And a lot of these films are kind of like, bizarre twists. They're not really, some of them aren't even really stories, they're more vignettes, I would say. But they have a kind of macabre, Twilight Zone, Tales from the Unexpected feel to it. So it's definitely, I would say, a good mix of kind of films. So like I've said, the cookie was my favourite one. The cookie, I forget what the actual film's called. But there's quite a fun one called Dollface, which is about this kind of weird woman that turns up on Halloween and they think it's a trick-or-treater. The first one's got quite an interesting concept about these kind of different sisters that happen. And like I said, there are a couple of genuine, haunted dolls that also are quite good. But there are some kind of like, some weaker moments as well with some of these. Like I said, one of these movies, a werewolf one, is actually in another movie called Monster X, and that is just, I don't think it's very good at all, to be quite honest. But as low budget kind of anthology movies goes, this is a good mix of kind of horror, comedy and suspense. I do feel it's kind of, obviously, for the lower budget kind of indie crowd, but nonetheless I do feel that it is intriguing. These stories, although they kind of maybe frustrate you a little bit because they end, maybe you might feel they end sooner than you would like, but nonetheless I do feel it kind of, they each could give you a good, or most of them at least, give you a good kind of, you know, level of intriguement, and you kind of want to see what happens. I will say that the wraparound story is particularly weak, and it's about a killer kind of doll, and the effects here are just so stupid. I mean, they have literally this doll that's clearly someone's pulling the arm down off screen and things like that, and then we see the doll's hand and it's clearly child's hand. It's really stupid. Yeah, so the wraparound story is pretty crap. A lot of them involve babysitters as well. So it's an odd mix. Like I said, the bizarre thing, this film doesn't exist currently. You know, it's like, I've been sent a screener of this one, and if you look at IMDb, it doesn't exist. So it's bizarre. So I really had to hunt down and try and find kind of information about all of these individual kind of like short films that were made from 2010 right up to kind of recently. So a bizarre mix of eclectic and eccentric horror movies, I've got to say. Overall, I've got to say, I still quite enjoyed it. It's a fun bunch of films. I'll give it a 6 out of 10. Are you going to watch it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.